welcome to the Intuitively Wild podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Levine. Living intuitively wild is about coming back home to ourselves. Here, we talk about how to live connected to ourselves, others, and nature, and make a commitment to radical authenticity, vulnerability, and acceptance. On this podcast, we delve into a wide range of topics that span the human experience. We peel back the layers and talk about the things that are often not talked about. This is a space for us all to walk and wander this path of life together. Let's dig into our roots and go deep. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Intuitively Wild, the podcast. I am so excited to share today's guest. We are joined by Victoria Niamh, and Victoria is a female confidence coach and mentor. She's a social media influencer advocating for body confidence and breaking stigma around mental health. And she also is the founder of the Glow Up Project, which aims to inspire women to understand that the real glow up is an inside job. As you can already hear, you probably know why I felt drawn to have her on the show. And I'm very discerning about who I follow on social media, but Victoria is someone who I've been following for a while, not only because she has gone through her own eating disorder recovery journey that she shares about, but because she genuinely shows up so authentically. You can just tell by what she's sharing. It is led by her heart, it is true to who she is, and she knows her values and decides to show up for them every single day. And that's a big part of what our conversation is about. We talk about practical, actionable tools to support our mental health, to train our brains to think differently, our step-by-step manifestation processes, and how to walk through our shadows in order to embrace our light. Victoria gets really vulnerable and open and shares about her biggest lessons and surprises from this past year, and also her biggest hope for this next year. And we both get a little emotional. I hope that this one helps you reconnect to the importance of truly showing up authentically and owning our shadows in order to do that. And I hope it helps you reflect on the year that has passed and set your intentions for the year to come. And with that being said, let us get into our conversation with Victoria. Victoria, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so the question I love to start off with is, what is something you wish people knew about you that you don't think many do?
Oh, I don't think people realize the amount of depth there is to me, and especially from like a spiritual aspect and how much of a deep thinker and feeler I am. Maybe people will pick up on the thought piece, but not so much how much I feel and how much of a believer I am in my faith, because it's just not something I talk about often, but it's something that guides me through my life.
Yeah, that's so interesting because as someone who consumes the content that you create, spirituality isn't always something that you talk about often, but in other ways, you are so vulnerable and share so much of your life. And I think it can be easy for people to think that because you do that, it means that there aren't these other aspects that you don't share. And that's why we should never assume that someone is sharing the full scope of who they are online.
Absolutely. And I guess I don't realize what I am and what I'm not sharing. And it became really obvious to me on my last retreat, because my retreats are so deep and so spiritual. And we really go there. And it's maybe where my social media and my Instagram was a while back, but it's like the work that I had to do to be in this place where I feel like I am now, where I feel quite free and light. And on the retreat, I overheard some of the guests, and then we actually had a conversation at the table, because some of the guests were like, if I'd have known it was going to be like this, I wouldn't have booked onto it. But I'm really glad that I didn't know, because this was everything that I needed. And they were like, I'm so shocked at how spiritual you are and how much you're into, I'm into my crystals and my saging and my Palo Santo and all of that. And I think they were a bit like, what? Like, this is crazy. But at the same time, absolutely loved it. And to be honest, I quite like that I get to keep that little bit of magic to myself.
I think that it can seem like we need to keep things light in order to spread the light and
Hmm.
be happy and positive all the time. But really, we only get to the light by going to those darker places and by really going deep within ourselves.
Hmm.
And that real quote unquote work can only be done in those more intimate environments. So it makes sense you would do it on your retreats or in your own private space. And people still feel your energy. And so they're still drawn to your offerings because of what you're putting out there. And so they're meant to be there for a reason. But
Hmm.
I love
Yeah.
that story. Speaking of all of this, what has your journey been like to becoming this confident version of yourself? One reason I wanted to have you on is because you show up so authentically and confidently. And the dances you do on your Instagram and just the way that you're so silly and true to who you are, it really inspires me. I love people like that. I always want to surround myself with people like that. But I know that that has not always been how you've been able to show up. So, how did that journey start for you?
So I think when I was younger, people who knew me growing up would probably say that I was super confident, but it was my exterior and internally I had such low self-esteem because a lot of my worth growing up was placed on my appearance. I was never massively academic, and I was often reminded that my looks were the best thing about me from a super, super young age. I remember even my family, I had this cousin who's same age as me, and she was so intelligent, really into a science and a maths and all of that. I wasn't interested. I was I was a dancer, like a dance kid. I wanted to perform and do all of that. And I remember so many times people would say to me, "Oh, it doesn't matter if you don't get any better at English or your maths because you can just be a model or something like that." And I was reminded of that so many times at different stages of my life, and it became too much for me to handle when there was things going on at home in my family life, and I felt so out of control. And I think because I'd learned that the best thing about me, the one thing I can control is my body and my appearance. And I turned to controlling my food and my exercise and my weight. And I was eventually diagnosed with an eating disorder. And I guess in the pursuit to achieve this perfect body, this perfect exterior, I completely lost myself. And it was in the recovery from the eating disorder, which I know when I speak about it now, it's going to sound like it was so linear and, was just a success from day one. It definitely wasn't. It was very up and down and up and down and up and down until we finally got to the place where I'm at now. But it was on that journey, which yeah, I had therapy and they were able to it was more crisis control because they just needed me not to be so ill anymore. It was when I discovered self-development, which was actually through a personal trainer who my dad got me when I was back to a healthy weight to kind of teach me how to actually look after myself. And he was amazing. And he introduced me to Tony Robbins. This was so long ago. It was when I was like 19. And so he introduced me to Tony Robbins. And I remember, I'd in every minute I'd be on Tony Robbins's YouTube watching things on limiting beliefs and your values and all of that. And I'd never heard of any of that before, ever. And I think for my 20th or my 21st birthday, I'd asked for tickets to go to see his seminar. He does huge seminars everywhere. He was doing one in London, so I went to that. And I think that kicked off a deeper understanding of myself. And I started to learn that I was more than my appearance. And I started to be able to unpick all of my limiting beliefs. And I started to recognize what my core values were and recognize where I was and wasn't living by those. And I think confidence comes from practice. And by practicing showing up as my most authentic self, definitely, online and in real life, it's helped me get to this place where I genuinely know that I am worth so much more than what I look like. And yeah, I guess that's how we're where we are today.
Thank you so much for sharing. And my story is very, very similar to a lot of what you shared and resonates so deeply for me. And I do believe that a core part of recovery is knowing your values and really
Mhm.
establishing them and getting grounded in them, and then figuring out how you can live in alignment with them every single day. Because, of course, yes, it's about figuring out how to nourish your body and how to do all these other things that can get you on the path to recovery. But I think in order to stay there and really show up fully in your life, it's this values work that can be a
Mhm.
missing piece for people. But one thing that I know can be challenging is showing up for your values every day, because
Mhm.
especially being online and having your work be on social media and just needing to be on social media so much, it can be so easy to get caught up in all the noise and what's going on around us. And that can really take us away from our values. And so I would love to know how you prioritize your values every day, even when it can be really challenging.
I don't think I really think about it that much. So my main values are freedom, and I've definitely explored that definitely throughout my 20s with so much travel and my job gives me freedom. I know that I could never be in a kind of employed situation because I know I need to be able to rule my diary and be able to kind of do what I want when I want, so to speak. It can be challenging with my job on social media, especially when it comes to some of the paid work that I do. And something that a lot of people don't know is when you have a job on social media, a lot of the time you have a manager. And so when deals come in and you see the kind of financial reward for the deals, if you turn things down, you're not only turning it down for yourself, you're also turning it down for your manager as well. And I wouldn't say so now. Like now, I'm so strong in the belief that what's for me isn't going to pass me by. So by saying no to this now doesn't mean that I'm not going to get something again in future. It just means I can get something better that's more meant for me in future. But in the past, there was definitely so much conflict. I think I had this kind of lack mentality and a bit of scarcity around work and around money, where I would maybe take on jobs that I maybe wouldn't fully back, but I just maybe didn't have the confidence to say no. And I think maybe that's where some of my values have been crossed. But I think kind of these days, I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of living by my values every day, I think.
I mean, I feel that from you. And I guess I'm especially curious when it comes to the body image piece, especially around this time of year. New year, new you, weight loss and perfecting your diet, when that gets kind of infiltrated into our heads. Again, I do think something that you pointed out before is that it's practice. Like every day you have to practice showing up for your values and really consciously bring that into your life. But are there any, I don't know, even if it's a mantra or just something you remind yourself if that noise can feel really loud, especially when it comes to body image stuff?
hmm I'm not gonna lie, like I have zero problems body wise and food wise. I could probably say that I do to sound more like vulnerable and maybe relatable, but I don't, it isn't a second thought for me anymore. Like it doesn't cross my mind. And I can very easily appreciate somebody else's journey and recognize that that's not my own. So yeah, I don't have those kind of body image struggles anymore. Well, there might be the odd day where I'm just not feeling myself. Usually it's around just before I'm coming on my period. I can have a little bit of a wobble, but I've learned that I can have a bad body image day and it doesn't mean that I need to act on it. Whereas past me would have a bad body image day and that would start to reflect on or start to ripple onto what I ate that day and the way that I would exercise. But yeah, these days I just kind of know if I have a bit of a body image wobble, it's okay. I can just move on with my day.
First of all, I'm so glad that you wouldn't lie to be more relatable and say that you have struggles with it, because it's so inspiring to hear that someone doesn't, to hear
hmm
that you've gotten to a place where it truly doesn't impact your life anymore and consistently you feel good and you don't have those struggles. I mean, I can just speak for myself. I'm very grateful for where I'm at in my recovery, but even still hearing that is inspiring to me.
Mhm.
And so I think that's important for you to share. So thank you.
Oh, yeah. Do you know something that really, really makes me mad? And I don't know if it's the same where you are, but in the UK, we have our healthcare system is called the NHS. And something a lot of doctors and psychiatrists said to me when I was struggling was you don't ever recover from an eating disorder, you just learn to live with it. And it makes me so angry because I think when you put that limit onto somebody who maybe doesn't have the kind of internal voice that can speak louder than what they've just said to you, it will naturally limit you and it will naturally make people think, okay, well, this is just me for life then. And I don't know what it was with me or like why I was, I guess, so lucky to develop this kind of mindset where when that was said to me, I was like, I am gonna get better. Like, and I'm gonna get better to prove to you that full recovery does happen and it can happen for anybody.
I had a similar experience in the sense that, well, I've had those messages shared as well, the exact ones you shared, but I had many doctors say to me, you will never recover unless you go on these medications. And I have so many friends who are on medications. They've saved their lives and they're amazing. But for me personally, after a lot of reflection and connecting with myself, I decided I didn't want to go on medication. And then I had all these doctors saying to me, you will never recover if you don't listen to us. And there was something in me that said, you're wrong.
Mm,
And down the line in my recovery, all of those doctors came back to me and said, I'm glad you proved us wrong.
mm,
And so I do think it maybe it's something in our design that just it's this stubbornness, but also this knowing of who we are and what we can do and just committing to that.
Yeah, I agree.
How do you now maintain your mental health on a daily basis? Again, I mentioned that sometimes you share your dancing and stuff like that on Instagram and you talk about how that supports your mental health. But are there any rituals or tools that you turn to that you know will support you and help maintain this connection to yourself?
First of all, my phone is constantly on sleep mode. And the only people who can contact me whenever are my mum and dad, my brother, and my boyfriend. Everybody else, they can obviously contact me, but I don't get notified. I have to go on my phone to have a look. And I genuinely think it's one of the biggest things that helps protect my mental health and helps me set some boundaries and just give myself some peace and some space. So that's for one. Two, I just get up quite early and I really enjoy my mornings and I make sure that my mornings feel fun. So most mornings I have the gym at 7. So I'll wake up at like 5:45 and make sure I've got time to have a cup of tea, which I genuinely look forward to every single morning, have my little dance, which I get really excited to do. Now it's winter and it's so dark. I'll light a candle, I'll sit and read for like 5 minutes. And it's just all of those little things that bring me so much joy. And I genuinely think when your morning routine, and I've literally just done a post about this before I came on here, when you create a little morning routine for yourself that feels fun, it allows you to feel in control of your day as opposed to you feeling like your day is controlling you. And I think in me starting that way, I'm setting myself up to have a really nice day. And I think finally, I I don't know if it's because for so many years, like literally, I've been with Mike for just over 9 years. And when we first got together, and I was doing this prior to being with Mike, but we would do it every single night. We would share the 3 things that we're grateful for. And we would have to do it every single night. And I think in doing that for so long, I naturally didn't have to speak it to him anymore. I didn't need to write it down anymore. I naturally started looking for things to be grateful for in every day. So from the minute I step out my door, even when I get up and I open the back door to let Enzo out to go to the toilet, and Enzo's my dog, I let Enzo out to go to the toilet and I just take a big breath of fresh air and I feel grateful. And when I'm driving to the gym in the morning, especially now because sunrise is a little bit later and the sun is rising, you see all the sky and like I feel so grateful. And it's like so many little things that I've learned to feel genuinely grateful for that have helped me. I just think that helps a lot in a world where we're constantly chasing and we're so fixated on the big things. So yeah, they're my three major things.
I love all of those, and mine are very similar as well. And this is a point you made earlier of practicing. We have to practice showing up for our life differently in order to embody that. And we have to train our minds to think differently. And if we can train our minds to think about the things we're grateful for and really see the small things that we love and to love the simple things and to find magic in the mundane, as I always say,
Love that.
we'll just naturally start to do that. And that does change our life. That is the
Mhm.
ripple effect that changes our life.
Yeah, definitely. I saw a thing on TikTok recently, and it was this girl, she was talking about this thing that our gran used to say to her, and it was that you need to learn how to polish the present.
Mm.
And what she meant by that was, say you've got to cook dinner every night. Not everybody enjoys cooking dinner. How can you polish that moment to make it feel better for yourself? So for me, that would be putting music on and being able to dance and sing while I'm cooking dinner. It makes it so much more enjoyable. When I'm just kind of sat in the house in the evenings, putting my candles on, that those little things that bring me joy in those moments where you might just not have the joy otherwise. And I really, really loved that little polish the present idea.
I love that. I'm definitely going to use that. And it makes me think about when I was first starting my recovery and I hated cooking dinner, you know? And my brain was telling me this is bad, this is wrong. I'm feeling this anxiety because it's something I shouldn't do. And I had to retrain my brain to think differently. And so I had to make that activity as fun as I possibly could. I had to start having different associations and feelings with cooking. And so I would put on music. I would try to have lighthearted, fun conversations around that meal. And that energy shift helped my body understand it was safe and it could feel happy in this situation that I used to associate with pain and fear and all those
Mhm.
other feelings.
Oh, I love that. I really love that.
So I want to shift a little bit because we're about to enter the new year. Also, when this airs, you'll have just had your birthday. So I'm curious if you've had any time to reflect on what this last year was for you and if you have any main words or messages that come to you when you think about this past year.
So I have been doing a lot of reflecting because I'm going to be 30, so I feel like I'm closing the door to a whole decade.
Mm.
Actually, I've shocked myself quite a lot this year. I finished 3 years of therapy in like January, and one of the main things I worked on with that therapist was this sense of like hyper independence I had. And she helped me recognize that being independent by choice and being independent by coping mechanism are two completely different things. And I was actually living a life that was led by being independent by coping mechanism, which meant it was holding up a bit of a barrier in my relationship, in my friendships, in basically everything that required connection because I was in there, but maybe with like a little toe out in order to be able to protect myself in some way. And she's really helped me start to depend on people and start to ask for help a little bit more and start to just lean on people, especially my partner. And this year he is, well, he has been for the past couple of years, but this year it's going crazy for him. He's set up his own gym and he's got a business partner, but it's really, really taken off at the minute. And so he's working crazy, crazy, crazy days. And in the past, it sounds so bad, but I wouldn't be so considerate of the amount of hours he was working because I'd be like, right, yeah, but I need to keep myself ticking. I need to keep making sure that I'm making all of the money that I've got because I never ever want to depend on you. And that was my mindset. Whereas I think doing some of that work with my therapist on the independence piece has really helped me to support him this year and recognize that I've had my years of growth where he's been able to support me and kind of pour some of his own things so that he can make sure that I'm mentally okay with everything that I've got going on. And this year, I'm like, okay, I can slow things down a little bit. I don't need to keep chasing and chasing and chasing. And I can support him and be there for him and look after the house, make sure everything's kind of sorted, which past me, I think I would have given myself the ick a little bit because I'm like, I want the house to be clean. I'm happy to come home and have his dinner ready and stuff like that, which were just so different to how I used to be. So I think, yeah, this year's been about being independent by choice, but also letting love in to its fullest extent,
Mm.
knowing that it's okay to support my partner and while I take a little bit of a step back.
That's so powerful. And I feel like you're speaking right to me because that is a journey that I have gone through and I'm continuing to go through. And the way that you phrased that really hit home for me. And recognizing the ways that my hyper independence has been a coping mechanism.
Mm,
And now embracing the deep connection and letting myself rely on people. And it's so beautiful to hear how that has allowed you to use your own words, let love in,
mm,
and to let yourself change, to realize that what maybe previously would have given you the ick is now something that you're excited to do, and you're not holding on to this past version of yourself either.
mm.
I think that that is so important, and that's something that can be really challenging for us.
Oh, absolutely. How do you find working on the hyper independence?
It's been such an important part of my healing. And I think a big shift for me is when I first started recovery in general, I had to ask for help. And that in of itself forced me out of hyper independence in a lot of ways. I had to go to treatment, and I had spent so much of my life living on my own and traveling. And even since then, I've done that. And so to ask for help and to go into a place where independence is taken from me kind of shifted my whole life.
Mm.
And also in treatment and starting therapy in general required me to use my voice more and to be more vulnerable and to share what was going on with me and to learn that it's safe and okay to do so. So that was one big chunk of it. And even more recently, I moved back to New York, which is where I grew up. And I thought I would never, ever move back to New York. But being closer to family has been such a sigh of relief.
Mm.
And they still live about an hour and a half away, but to know that they're close enough that they're there for me if I need them in a way that they haven't been in a really long time. And to also start to finally want to put down roots somewhere instead of constantly feeling like I'm gonna go off on my own and travel
Oh,
again.
I relate.
Yeah. To finally feel like, no, I'm ready. I'm ready. I want to put down roots here. I want to know people here. I want them to know me. I want to rely on people here. That has been a whole shift in my identity that I've had to grapple with, but have really been excited about. It comes with fear and also excitement.
Oh, I think the journey is amazing. I was thinking earlier on my 21st birthday, I spent it with like two friends and my mum and dad because I didn't really have anyone in my life at the time. And I'm about to have my 30th birthday and I'm spending like it sounds so bad and I hope none of them ever listen to this. But I was literally like I said to my mum yesterday, Mum, I need to hope that some people can't come and they'll cancel because there's 17 girls who are like my girls who I've met through different stages of my 20s and then I introduced them all and they all mean so much to me in equal amounts and I find it crazy that my 21st was literally spent with my mum and dad. And I'm about to have my 30th with all of these girls around me and just like how beautiful that is.
I got the chills while you were talking about that because that, again, I relate to that. And it is so crazy to look back. And I think that's one reason why key points in our year are so powerful, like our birthdays, like the new year, because we can really look back at this exact moment in past years and see who we are now and where we are now. And assess how we're feeling and if we're proud of ourselves and what we're surprised by and what we've learned. And so to look back and be like, oh my God, look at who I am now. It's crazy. On that note, do you have any intentions for this new year and anything that comes to mind when you're thinking about who you want to be or how you want to feel when you look back on your birthday next year?
So I feel like I'm about to enter like a big change in my life, hopefully. Next year, me and Mike want to start trying for kids. Well, for like a bit for a baby, which will eventually become a child. But yeah, sometimes I say I want to try for a baby, and then people are like, that baby turns into a child. I think this is my overthinking head with social media. But anyway, we want to start trying to conceive next year, and so I it scares the hell out of me. I feel like I'm gonna cry. It scares me so much because I feel like I'm kind of going into the unknown. Um, Not so much actually like having the baby. It's more the kind of trying to conceive and how that experience is gonna be because I think I I've done so much work on myself over the past 10 years and I've really like, oh my God, what is wrong?
No, it's the tears are welcomed always.
I feel like it's the first time I've like fully spoken about it. Um, yeah, I feel like I've done so much to kind of work on my mental health and to look after myself and to love myself. And I think there's like an element of worry that if, it doesn't happen as easy as I would hope, how I would deal with that. Because I think it's something that nobody talks about. I feel like when it comes to fertility and trying to conceive and all of that, you don't hear about any of it. You just hear the baby announcement. And so I'm so kind of conflicted about how much I want to talk about this kind of online. Um, but yeah, I'm basically that's next year. I am just kind of like not really wanting to plan trips or plan too much ahead and kind of have the year as being a time to surrender and hope that we get a little miracle.
Oh, I am so excited for you. And I think that these parts of our journeys are so important to talk about. I agree that the different aspects of pregnancy and pre and post pregnancy are not talked about enough. And alongside that, just different layers of our journeys are not talked about. Yes, there's so much excitement when it comes to new opportunities and experiences and things that can seem really positive.
Mhm.
But there's also so much fear and uncertainty in the growth and the change. I think, especially for someone who's experienced struggles with their mental health, because I have been thinking about this a lot in my life as well, not when it comes to pregnancy, but with other things that are coming to fruition for me this next year.
Mhm.
I'm so excited about them, and they're things that I've been working towards and wanting for so long. And at the same time, they're going to ask so much of me in a different way than I've been asked of in life before. And it's going to be a lot of change. And I have these fears of I'm finally stable with my mental health. Is that going to impact me? What's going to happen? Am I going to be able to handle all of that?
Mhm.
And what I keep coming back to is trust
Yeah.
and knowing that I can trust myself, knowing that I can trust my support system, and knowing that I can trust my path and whatever comes my way. And of course, it's going to be challenging, but those are lessons that I will need to learn. And I have the tools to learn them and all the work that you've done has been leading you to this point.
Mhm.
Yeah, deep trust is really my lifeline right now.
Yeah. And I think I do have a lot of trust and I have a lot of faith that this is it's meant for me. And I have faith that it's gonna happen. But yeah, I think there's always just that there's the horrible side of your brain, which is like, is you sure? Maybe it won't. Like, what would you do if it doesn't? And I think I'm just really trying to quieten that out because I don't even want to speak it too much into the universe, like the fears and the worries. But yeah, they exist.
Of course, of course they exist. And I do think it's a constant fine line between knowing when to express them and let them out and relieve ourselves of that, and then also when to quiet them and distract from them and bring ourselves back to our center. And just like when we were talking about recovery, it's acknowledging the thoughts, but then recognizing that they don't hold power over us and
Mhm.
they don't have to impact our mood or our actions or our beliefs. And we can come back to that sense of trust and faith.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm excited to see what you've got going on. What's going
Oh,
up for
thank
you?
you. Yes, I'm excited to hopefully share very soon. I want to talk about your spirituality a little bit more that we touched on that in the very beginning and this connection to your intuition.
Mhm.
And especially even as you're talking about faith and knowing that this path is meant for you. What does that knowing feel like for you? And what does your if you feel like you have a connection to your intuition, what does that feel like for you?
For me, it feels like, do you know when you're with someone who you really love, like whether it's a friend or a partner, for me, it's like a really full feeling in my heart
Mm.
that like this is what's meant for me.
And what about when you know something's not meant for you? What does that feel like?
Oh, for me, it's like sickness in the pit of my stomach. I know immediately when
Mhm.
something's not for me.
Have you always had that, or have you had to work on that connection to yourself?
I think I've always known when something wasn't for me. It took me a while to be able to trust my positive intuition. And that actually came after I was invited onto this retreat to do content. And all I saw was like free retreat content. Spain. Right. So I was like, yeah, amazing. So like a few days before the retreat, we got sent the itinerary. And this was before I was into any kind of spirituality, anything like that. So we get this itinerary and it was like howling at the moon, ecstatic dance, naked river walk. And I was like, what the fuck? But anyway, I'd agreed to go, like my flights were booked. So I was like, "Do you know, what? I'm just gonna have to do it." So I went and we were maybe 2 days in and I was kind of doing it, but I was definitely resistant to everything that was going on. And then I remember I just had this change of thought where I thought, I am here. I can make my experience really crap by holding back, or I can just go with it. Everybody else is. I'm the fool if I hold back because I'm like so in my ego. And so this was a 7 day retreat. And when I tell you that was my spiritual awakening, I came back and I was like, I don't know who I am. And I remember Mike picked me up from the airport and we went to Starbucks and I felt like I was floating. I just didn't feel like I was on the earth with everybody else. It was a really wild experience for me. And so after that, I hired a coach. She's so spiritual, but I think I relate to her a lot because she's like the woo woo, but also feels very like human and normal to me, if that's not wrong to say.
Mhm.
And so she just really helped me explore what was going on for me. And I think it was from that point that I was able to just like lean back in life and with my goals and with anything I wanted to happen for myself. I genuinely believe that if I spoke it into existence and I took steps towards it, it would happen for me. And there's so many things throughout my 20s that I've manifested that are crazy. And just like timings of things. And I'm just such a big believer of it all now. And I think for so long, like when I had that kind of awakening, I only felt comfortable and safe to refer to like the universe. And actually, growing up, my mum and dad have been in and out of church. And when my granddad died, they were going to church consistently for years and years and years, and they became like the treasurer and the secretary of one particular church. And when I had my eating disorder, I remember I think I was maybe in my recovery, so I looked a bit better. And I went with them one time, and this woman came up to me and she was like, "You don't know who I am, but I just want you to know that we've all been praying for you, and it's because of God that you are getting better. Like we're all here with you in spirit." And I think in the back of my mind, I've always believed that there's something up there, just like around me, guiding me and watching over me and protecting me. And I think I guess I've just kind of grown in confidence in myself and leaned further into my spirituality. I've recognized that actually I believe there's a God. I'm not religious, so to speak. I don't have a religion, but I do massively believe that there's something bigger than me that's guiding me, that's helping me, that's sorting out all of my, when people are mean to me and I don't need to be mean back anymore because that's God's business now. Yeah, it's really helped me lean into that side of things.
I love that. And I think that it's so important for us all to find what God or the universe or our spirituality means to us and to not let anyone else define that for us or project their beliefs onto us, because when we're willing to walk that path for ourselves and establish what it means to us, then it's a really embodied experience. And we
Hmm.
know it's truly our own, and that faith will guide us through those harder moments versus if it's just something that someone else gave to us,
Yeah.
it might be harder for us to actually fully connect to that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
And do you have an active manifestation process, or is it just something that naturally comes into your life?
I think I genuinely, there's like the different types of manifestors, isn't there? I don't know too much about them, to be honest, but
Mm.
I can just think things and they will happen for me. And like this is such a silly one. But, and I actually spoke this. I didn't just think it. But there's this mask that I use, like an LED mask. And I saw that the brand brought out like an upgraded version. And I was said to her, "Oh my God, I really want that. The newer version. It kind of covers your face a little bit more. I would love to have that." And then I literally went home from her house and I got a message from my manager being like, "Current body want to partner with you on their new mask." And I was like, "Sorry, what?" But so many things happen for me like that. And it's crazy. So yeah, to be honest, when it comes to manifestation, I I'll think things and I'll believe that I'm worthy of that. I think that's a big part of like my manifestation process. And I'll take active steps, whether, for the mask. So maybe it's just making sure I'm consistent with my social media or I'm tagging them or whatever. I'll take those actions in order to kind of get that result, but also we'll just kind of sit back and know that the universe is working in my favor.
Yeah, I don't know. Have you heard of human design?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so I won't go into your whole chart. It's very detailed and nuanced. But one thing that I will share is that there's a different core parts of your design that speak to you having those gut responses to something. And when it's a yes, you then take whatever action in front of you that you're meant to take
Hmm.
to make it happen. And you also are meant to see all the possibilities and to just know that it's possible for you. And then you're meant to just let it flow into your life.
Yeah.
And everyone's chart is so different. Like mine has some elements that are like that, but in other ways is very, very different. But to hear you lay out that process for you and for it to align with your human design so acutely is just so interesting. So I wanted to share that.
What's your manifestation process?
So for me, I also am someone who's meant to respond to things and I have those gut responses, but then I also need to kind of feel out how it feels over time, which you actually have that to a degree as well. And then mine is, it's a little more active. Like I have to be even more specific and practical and strategic about how things might come to me, while yours has a little bit more of this surrender and flow element to it.
Yeah.
And also for me, I'm really meant to see things in the lens of what I want and how they're gonna help my overall goal moving forward, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Versus
I
you're
love
like,
that.
it's all possible. Yours is like possibility in that kind of lens.
Yeah. Oh, I love this.
Yeah, it's definitely it's interesting. Human design, I'm very passionate about it. It's such a rabbit hole.
There's an app for it, and I did have the app, but I
Mm.
really can't remember much from it, to be honest.
Well, it seems like in a lot of ways you're aligning to it naturally, so it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Is there one area of your life that you're hoping to strengthen your connection to yourself or work on in this next year? And the answer can be no. Mm.
I think with my work, there's a few elements of the behind the scenes of my work in terms of the people who I'm kind of my team, so to speak, where I feel like sometimes maybe I'm kind of a bit undervalued and being seen as the person who I was when I was 24 as opposed to who I am now, almost turning 30. I think I need to maybe make a few selfish decisions in order to be able to like really let go of that past version of me and really step into and become even more who I am right now. So yeah, that's like a kind of big thing for me as I'm going out of this year and then going into next year.
Yeah, that's such a big thing, and that's so important. It also speaks to the fact that change is a process, and we can be so deeply ingrained in who we are and our values in so many different areas of our life, and then still be needing to work on it in others. And that's everyone. Like, I think that it's really hard to be 10 out of 10 in every single aspect of our life. And having that awareness on what our next step is in order to be fully connected to our true self
Mhm.
is the most important part. So excited for you to take those steps forward.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
So, living intuitively wild means living connected to your true, authentic self no matter what. How do you feel like you live intuitively wild?
Ooh. I think I just show up as myself on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, I genuinely think that's just it. I just be myself. And like, it's taken quite a lot of work. There was a lot of times where I would be myself or want to be myself, and then I'd come away and I'd start to question myself, I question what I said, I question what I did. And I'm starting to just really embrace who I am and recognize that I can't control other people's thoughts and opinions of me. The only thing I can control is how I show up in the world. And I guess that's me living intuitively wild.
Yes, absolutely. I would definitely say that you live that way and you embrace that energy. Please share with everyone where they can find you and connect with you and the work you're doing, and also how you help others live intuitively wild and live confidently and authentically through your retreats and all your work.
Yeah, so I have a side business called the Glow Up Project, where I host retreats and do workshops, and we have journals, which I often forget about, forget I even have those. And through those, I take people, I guess, on the journey that I've had to go on of the shadow work onto the like light work and able to help people really step into and embrace themselves. One of my favorite things about doing the retreats is actually one of my values is community and bringing people together. And I often think, especially on the abroad retreats, like I don't really need to be doing all of these workshops. Like obviously it helps people to a degree, but I would be happy enough just bringing all of these women to one villa so they get to meet and they get to know each other and they get to become friends and like meet actually like actual amazing people who want to support them. So I guess that's how I help other people live intuitively wild. And then there's my social media platform, which is Victoria Niamh. It's spelled the Irish way, so it's Niamh. And through that, I just share experiences of what it's like to be a woman. Nothing's too much.
One thing that is interesting that I was thinking about when you were talking is how your process from embracing your shadow to come into this light, part of it was when you went on that retreat and you had no idea what to expect, and it took you into this spiritual awakening, you could
Mm.
say. And that's a kind of what you do with your retreats,
Yeah.
especially when people don't know the depths that they're going to go to and the shadow work that they're going to work through. And you really do walk people through the same process that you did. And you're only able to do that because you went there with yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I say to everybody at the start of my retreats, or even my day events, I tell them that there is absolutely nothing that you're going to do over the next few days that I haven't been through myself. And every single part of this has served a purpose in my healing and in my growth. So, yeah, I've actually never thought of it like that before. I used to be a personal trainer in my early 20s. And when we would do the sales training, they'd be like, you need to sell them what they want, but give them what they need. And while I don't actively think like that when I'm have the retreats up for sale, I think that must be exactly what I'm doing because I know what people need to a degree, but I guess a lot of people don't know that they need that because they haven't been there before. So that was interesting to put two and two together because I've never thought of it like that before.
Yeah, well, that's when your authenticity just shows through, and that is the most important part. I mean, I think that that's what our world needs the most. I think that's what social media needs the most is just people showing up so authentically and heart-centered. So I'm grateful for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really, really, really enjoyed this chat.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Intuitively Wild, the podcast. I hope it helped deepen your connection to yourself, sparked some insights, and inspired you to live intuitively wild. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would share it with others and leave a rating and review. And please reach out to me. I would love to connect with you. I will see you next time for more magic.